Morning. It's Tuesday, April 23rd, and we have a crisis in this country that finally may be getting the attention it deserves. And I'm talking about homelessness, which is an unfortunate situation in this country. We have too many homeless people, and they are camped under bridges, in parks, in subway stations, in all kinds of places that the general public uses. And why? Why do we have so many homeless in this country? I understand that the cost of living in this country is very large. And I understand that we have 50 million people at the poverty level. And I assume that many of the homeless are at the poverty level. But I am sure that there are some homeless that have jobs and things like that, but they can't find a reasonable place to live, cost-wise. And many people probably are living in their cars and things like that. So when I hear that there are people now who are going to try and consider homelessness as lawlessness, and are going to try and punish these homeless people because they're taking up space in the tunnels and under the bridges and in the parks and in any vacant areas that they can find. I think that's a terrible thing. But I also think that we as a nation need to solve this problem. The homeless population has increased in the United States by something like 12% in the last year. And why should that happen? It's probably because the people, even though they're working, they're not making enough money. I'm not saying that people should be paid more. Jobs that people have need to be done. But not every job requires a huge salary. So it's unfortunate that we have 50 million people living at the poverty level because we're not paying enough money. And I don't know what the minimum wage is in every section of this country. But I think that more than half the states still have a $7.50 minimum wage. Well, if you're making $7.50 an hour, you can't afford to live any place except on the streets. So I don't know. I don't have a real answer for what we should do about the homeless situation. But if it continues to grow, that's a terrible thing. That's a terrible thing that every city, every area of this country could be exposed to people living on the streets, in shacks and self-made cardboard houses or whatever they use these days. And what is law enforcement supposed to do about that? What happens when these people fill streets that are needed by the population that is living in housing around there? Are we to allow crowds of homeless people to cause serious problems for their local neighborhoods? I don't know the answer to that question. I don't have any real answer with respect to homelessness, because I am sure that many of these homeless people are working. So if you're working and you're homeless, that's a terrible thing. Not getting enough money to live in an apartment or something. But then we have to understand that the landlords are not sympathetic. They're out to make a buck. And the cost of living in an apartment is not necessarily reasonable. When I see the rents that people are paying, I can understand why that's a contributing factor to homelessness. Now, I was lucky when I first got married. We had a nice little 2-room apartment in a private house, and then when my daughter was born, we were able to move into New York City housing, which was wonderful, beautiful apartment. near Bronx Park, and we were able to pay our rent easily. Of course, if I made too much money, I would have to leave that apartment. But that didn't happen for 10 years. So we've got to figure out how to take care of this homeless problem. We can't continue to have the homeless population grow. I don't even know if these people are allowed to vote if you don't have a legal address. I don't know how many homeless there are in the country, but I'm sure there's several million. And to have several million in this great country homeless is just a disgrace. And why? Why can't we find out what these people are about? Why don't we have a team of what I will call specialists to work on this problem, to figure out how and what these people need to get them off the streets? It's obvious we probably need to build more shelters at reasonable costs and things like that. But this is a problem that is swallowing this country up, and we're not doing anything about it. We allow them to live in the parks and live under the bridges and live in the subway stations, then we're doing something wrong. Now, I'm not in favor of putting these people in jail. We don't have room for them in jail either. But I will bet they wouldn't mind living in jail if they could go about their business after and just return home to the jail. I know that's a crazy thought. But the situation in this country with the homeless is a crazy situation. We shouldn't have homelessness on the streets. But it's another one of the problems that we don't have the mental capacity to fix right now. We have so many other problems that this is just another item on the chart, so to speak. Another thing that has to be taken care of by our great country. And maybe it's our not-so-great country now. Because if we have millions of homelessness out on the streets, that is not the way to grow this nation. And now this crisis, I'll call it a crisis, has reached the level where it's going to the Supreme Court. And the court will then debate about whether cities can respond to a spike in homelessness by punishing homelessness. That belongs in the Supreme Court. I think that's a place where it should be decided. Can cities punish homeless people? It's ridiculous. What would the punishment be? Jail time? Is that the way to get the homeless off the streets? There's no good answer. Homelessness, a major problem that is not getting the attention it deserves. I don't even know if these people are allowed to vote. Maybe if they were voting, things would change. Anyhow, I leave you with these crazy thoughts today. Have a great day. Bye.